My brother framed me for stealing from our dad's account, so I collected proof, exposed him publicly, and watched his life collapse in silence. I'm a 27-year-old guy, and the middle child in a very traditional, very image-obsessed family. And by traditional, I don't mean holiday dinners and yes sir, no ma'am values. I mean the kind where emotions are weaknesses, loyalty is demanded, not earned, and appearances matter more than truth. Growing up, I was the kid who followed the rules. I did my homework without being told, folded laundry when no one asked, and quietly cleaned up after my siblings' messes. My older brother Eric was the golden child, charismatic, loud, always chasing some flashy idea. When he failed, our parents blamed the world. When I succeeded, they barely noticed. My younger sister Leah could do no wrong, always too young to understand whenever she crossed a line. I never rebelled. Not once. Maybe I should have. By the time I hit college, I was already working part-time at Dad's auto repair shop. Not glamorous work, but I liked the rhythm of it. Fixing things. Making stuff run smoothly. I thought if I kept showing up, being consistent, Dad would see that I was the one worth investing in. Meanwhile, Eric was out blowing through money, jumping from startup scams to half-baked business ideas. He'd come home, charm everyone, borrow a few $100 and vanish again. I'd still be there the next morning, unlocking the shop at 7 a.m. Mom used to say, "You're the steady one. We never have to worry about you." Funny how that felt less like a compliment and more like a sentence. Looking back now, I realize being responsible wasn't a badge of honor in our house. It just meant I was the easiest one to overlook, and I had no idea how much that blind trust would cost me. About 8 months ago, Dad handed me something I never thought I'd get from him, a set of login credentials. It wasn't much, just limited access to the business account so I could place supply orders and help with payroll when he was busy. But in our family, that meant everything. My dad wasn't the kind of man who said, "I'm proud of you" or "I trust you." This was his version of that, and I took it seriously. I created detailed spreadsheets, saved every receipt, triple-checked every invoice before submitting it. I didn't even round up mileage on reimbursements. I treated that account like sacred ground. Because to me, it was more than money. It was validation. Eric, on the other hand, would stroll in every few weeks like he was royalty. "Yo, you got a few bucks?" He'd laugh, not even looking at me. "Made a killer crypto trade last week, bro. Should have gone in with me. Missed your shot." Dad always rolled his eyes at him, but he still handed over 20s or filled up his gas tank like it was nothing. I told myself it didn't bother me, that I was playing the long game. What I didn't see, what I couldn't even imagine, was that while I was staying up late to balance the books, Eric was watching. Not to learn, not to help, but to find cracks, weak spots, openings. I caught him looking at my laptop screen once when I left it open in the office for 5 minutes. "Just checking out your nerd spreadsheets," he joked. I laughed it off at the time. But there was something in his eyes I missed completely. Predatory curiosity. It started like any other Tuesday morning. Dad walked into the shop, coffee in hand, flipping through a stack of printouts from the bank. I didn't think much of it. He reviewed the account every couple of weeks just to make sure everything was square. But then I heard it. A sharp intake of breath. That awful clipped silence that usually came right before a storm. "Why are there 3 withdrawals here?" he asked, holding out the papers. I walked over, already confused. "What do you mean?" "I didn't—" "3 cash withdrawals," he said, jabbing his finger at the lines. "One $200, 2,300, and another for about $300. That's over $4,000, son." "You telling me you didn't notice that?" I felt my stomach hit the floor. I scrolled through the online account. The transactions were real, and somehow they were listed under the account ID I used. But I never pulled cash. I only ordered parts and processed payroll. That was it. "Dad, I swear to you I didn't make these. I don't even know how to authorize cash withdrawals. You never gave me that kind of access." He didn't yell. He didn't accuse. But the way he looked at me, like he didn't know who I was anymore, that cut deeper than any words could. "I hope you're telling me the truth," he said quietly, walking back to his office. An hour later, Eric waltzed in like nothing happened. He patted me on the back and said, "Tough morning, huh? You gotta be more careful with Dad's money, man." It took everything in me not to punch him right then and there. That was the first time I wondered, Had he planned this all along? Eric started acting like he was the level-headed one now, like he was the glue keeping the family business from falling apart. I don't think he meant to do it, I overheard him telling Mom one night in the kitchen. But maybe he's just stressed. Working too hard. People make dumb choices when they feel overwhelmed. He said it low enough that I had to lean in from the hallway, but loud enough to know I'd hear it. And the worst part? Mom nodded. She actually nodded. At dinner, he doubled down, offering to help out at the shop until things settled. Dad didn't argue. He just looked at his plate and muttered something about needing all hands on deck. No one even asked if I was okay. It was like Eric had cast a spell over them, wrapping his lies in a blanket of fake concern and brotherly love. He even came into the shop the next morning dressed for work, for once not in sweatpants but in jeans and a clean shirt. He made a show of organizing tools and answering customer calls. Meanwhile, I was being treated like a liability. Dad told me not to touch the account again, even for parts. "Let Eric handle it for now," he said, like that made any damn sense. Eric clapped me on the shoulder and smiled. "It's just temporary, man. No hard feelings. Temporary? No hard feelings?" I wanted to scream, but I didn't, because part of me was still holding on to the belief that Dad would see through this, that facts would matter, that being the responsible one all these years would count for something, but deep down I could feel it slipping. My reputation, my place in the family, my father's trust in Eric. He was just getting started. By the end of that week, it felt like my entire identity had been rewritten, and not by me. At the shop, I was still clocking in early, still running diagnostics, still answering client calls. But now, every move I made felt like it was being watched. Dad barely spoke to me unless it was about something strictly mechanical. No more banter. No more updates. Just cold efficiency. And Eric? He was thriving. He installed a new accounting app on Dad's phone, set up auto alerts to prevent further mistakes, and started walking around with a little notepad, jotting things down like he was the manager. Customers even started asking if we were co-owners. I almost choked the first time I heard that. The worst moment came on a Thursday afternoon when I reached into the supply cabinet for a set of brake pads. Dad walked over and said, "Let Eric track that." "You don't need to touch inventory right now." I froze. "You think I'm going to steal brake pads now?" He didn't answer. He just walked away. That silence, heavy, humiliating, loud in all the wrong ways, was worse than if he had yelled in my face. I was being treated like a criminal in my own workplace. The same shop where I'd spent weekends scrubbing oil stains off the floor when I was 15. The same office where I used to help Dad file tax papers, drinking lukewarm vending machine coffee while he told me stories about his first job. Now it was like none of that ever happened. I was a ghost. Worse, a threat, and Eric had planted that seed so smoothly, so perfectly, that no one even questioned it. But I had questions, and I was done ignoring the sick feeling crawling under my skin. The damage didn't stay inside the shop. It started leaking into every corner of my life, quietly at first, then like a flood. I got a text from my cousin Jenna asking, "Are you okay?" "Heard some stuff. Just checking in." That was weird. Jenna and I weren't close. When I asked her what she meant, she just said, "Maybe talk to your mom." So I did. Mom looked uncomfortable. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Finally, she said, "Eric mentioned you've been under a lot of pressure lately. Financially. He's just worried about you." Worried? Since when had Eric ever worried about anyone but himself? That weekend, I got uninvited, yes, uninvited, from our cousin's birthday BBQ. My aunt said there'd been family tension, and they just wanted to keep things light. I knew what that meant. I was being treated like a liability now. The guy who stole from his own father. The guy who might be unstable. Even my girlfriend Talia started acting different. More guarded. One night she asked, "Is there something you're not telling me? About money?" My jaw dropped. "You think I did it too?" I asked. She looked torn. "No, I don't know what to believe anymore." That hit harder than anything else. I wasn't just losing respect, I was losing my character in people's eyes. It felt like I was rotting from the inside out, while Eric sat pretty, spinning stories behind my back with a grin and a shrug. Everywhere I turned, I felt accused, judged, cornered, and that's when I realized Eric wasn't just trying to steal my dad's money, he was trying to erase me entirely. I was one more sideways glance away from losing my mind. I needed something, anything to prove I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't the thief everyone suddenly believed I was. That's when I remembered the office security cam. We had a cheap little camera mounted in the shop office. It wasn't high-tech, just motion-activated clips saved to a cloud account Dad never checked. He only installed it after a break-in scare last year. I had the login info saved in my email. Heart pounding, I signed in late one night from my apartment. There weren't many clips, just a few scattered recordings. But on the Thursday before the money went missing, one file caught my eye. It showed Eric alone in the office, sitting at Dad's desk. At first I thought, maybe he was just checking something. But the timestamp was around 8:45 p.m., well after hours. And he was typing, focused, clicking through tabs. Then I noticed something that made my stomach turn. He reached into the drawer and pulled out the bank notebook, the one with our business routing info, passwords, account IDs. I paused the clip and took a screenshot. Then I backed up the entire video and saved it on a separate USB drive. I didn't know if it was enough, but it was a start. The first real crack in the story he'd built. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was scared, but because for the first time in weeks, I had hope. Proof. Eric had left fingerprints. And I was going to collect every single one, because if he wanted to play dirty, he had no idea who he was messing with. After weeks of feeling powerless, I finally had something to grip onto. That tiny sliver of proof was all I needed to dive in head first. I spent the next few nights combing through everything. Old emails, login notifications, firewall alerts, system timestamps. I knew I couldn't accuse Eric outright. Not yet. Not without a bulletproof timeline. So I treated it like a puzzle, one piece at a time. I remembered that every time someone accessed the business account online, it sent a confirmation email to Dad's inbox and a backup to the shop's shared Gmail. That account had been idle for months, but I logged in anyway, and there it was. 3 emails confirming cash withdrawals on the exact days the money went missing. But what caught my eye was the IP address log. The shop used a static IP, but these emails showed access from a different one that didn't match our Wi-Fi. So I called in a favor. A college friend of mine, Nate, works in cybersecurity. I told him everything, well, most of it, and asked if he could help me track the IPs. I sent him the headers. He called back the next night. "This IP's registered to a residential address," he said. "It's not the shop." He read it out loud. It was Eric's apartment. I sat there staring at the wall, numb and electric at the same time. I knew it, I had felt it, and now I had digital proof to back it up. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet, I wanted more. Solid timestamps. Device IDs, patterns, a case so airtight that even Dad, stubborn, proud, and blind, couldn't ignore it. Because I wasn't just fighting for money anymore. I was fighting for the version of myself they tried to destroy, just when I thought I was gaining ground. Dad called for a family meeting. He never did that unless something major was going down. I walked into the living room, and Eric was already there, legs kicked up on the coffee table, looking relaxed in that smug, fake, humble way he always did when he knew he had the upper hand. Mom was sitting stiffly on the edge of the couch, eyes darting between us like she already knew this wouldn't end well. Dad stood near the fireplace holding a folder. "I've made a decision," he said, voice flat. I felt my breath catch. "I'm transferring control of the business," he continued. "Not ownership, but day-to-day operations. It's time to let Eric take the lead." The room spun. "What?" I managed to say, my throat suddenly dry. "You're giving him the business?" "It's not permanent," Dad said quickly, as if that made it better. "I just think you need to step back for a while."
"Clear your head."
"Maybe take some time away." Eric gave me this look, half pity, half glee. "It's just temporary, bro," he added. "We'll keep things steady till you're back on your feet." Like I was some unstable addict they were gracefully easing out of leadership. I wanted to scream. To pull out the video, the IP logs, the bank notifications, but I didn't, because in that moment, I saw something I hadn't seen before. They'd already made up their minds. Evidence wouldn't matter. Not yet, so I nodded, silent, humiliated, boiling. Let them hand him the keys. Let him play king. Because while they were busy crowning a fraud, I was preparing to burn the whole damn lie to the ground. After that meeting, I stopped trying to explain myself. No more defending. No more asking for trust. I went quiet and let Eric think he'd won, and that's when he got sloppy. He started acting like the shop was already his. Replaced the old sign out front with a sleeker one. Ordered a stupidly expensive espresso machine for the break room. Switched from our usual suppliers to some sketchy vendor a friend recommended. Dad didn't say much, just grunted and nodded like change was inevitable. I stayed back, watched from a distance, but I tracked everything. Eric didn't know I still had back-end access to some of the accounting tools. He never changed the password to the internal inventory tracker. I started cross-referencing parts ordered versus parts billed, and the numbers didn't add up. Thousands of dollars in overcharges, missing receipts, and random consulting fees to people who didn't exist in the payroll records. I documented every line. Meanwhile, Nate helped me dig deeper. We found out Eric had routed some of the stolen funds through a crypto wallet, then converted them to cash and deposited them through an ATM near his apartment. All traceable, all time-stamped. He wasn't just arrogant, he was predictable. He thought he'd buried me under that false narrative. That I'd walk away quietly, tail between my legs. But I let him think that on purpose. Because when someone's digging their own grave, the last thing you want to do is interrupt. I wasn't going to confront him, I was going to crush him, and all I had to do was wait for the perfect moment. I thought the worst was behind me. But then Dad invited me out to lunch, a rare gesture. I stupidly let myself believe it was going to be a turning point. Maybe he had questions. Maybe he was finally starting to see what was happening. We sat at our usual diner. He barely touched his coffee. After a few minutes of awkward silence, he cleared his throat and said, "I've updated the will." I blinked. "Okay, I've removed you from the business inheritance. It'll go to Eric now. I need someone dependable, someone who hasn't let me down." The words hit like a punch to the chest. I don't remember what I said next. I think I nodded. Maybe I mumbled something. But I felt like I was watching my life unravel in slow motion from outside my own body. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't even about the business. It was that after everything I'd done, after everything Eric had taken, I was the one being erased. That night, I drove to an empty parking lot, turned off my headlights, and just sat in the dark. I couldn't cry. I couldn't scream. I just stared at the steering wheel, wondering what the hell I did wrong. How did it come to this? The guilt. The silence. The betrayal. It was a weight pressing on my chest, one I couldn't seem to push off. But somewhere in that stillness, something hardened inside me. Not bitterness. Not even rage, clarity. They had made their choice. Now I was going to make mine. I didn't storm into the office waving papers. I didn't yell or demand justice. I just opened a new anonymous email account, uploaded everything to a hidden Dropbox folder, and sent the link to my dad with a one-line message. Thought you'd want to know who you really handed the keys to. No name, no signature, no plea. I waited. The first day passed with nothing. I still showed up at the shop, quiet, invisible. Eric was in rare form, laughing loudly with customers, giving out free oil changes like he was a damn game show host. He didn't have a clue, but on the second day, Dad didn't come in. No text, no call, just silence. On the third day, I walked into the office and found Eric pacing, sweating, jaw clenched. Dad had confronted him that morning. At home. Apparently, he didn't yell, just laid out every file, every screenshot, every IP trace, one by one. Asked him calmly, "Do you still want to keep lying?" Eric blew up. Called it fake. Accused me of hacking him. Gaslighted the hell out of the situation like he always did. But this time it didn't land, because Dad knew. He had seen the exact time-stamped withdrawals, during hours when Eric swore he was out of town. He saw the same crypto wallet used twice before on Eric's laptop from last year, from the same IP. It was undeniable. The kind of truth you can't shout over. Eric didn't show up the next day, or the day after that, and I said nothing, no gloating. No, I told you so. Just silence, because revenge didn't have to be loud. Sometimes, it's just letting the truth walk in and do the talking. What happened next was like watching a house of cards collapse. One slow, glorious flick at a time. At first, the whisper started inside the family. My uncle stopped by the shop and didn't say a word to Eric, just asked me how business was going. My cousin Jenna messaged again, this time with, "I'm so sorry." I didn't know the truth. I feel awful. Word got around. and once it did, it spread fast. Eric's entire social circle, those fake entrepreneur buddies, the girlfriends, the networking guys he partied with, started ghosting him. One of them even messaged me anonymously and said, "You were right to play the long game." He burned a lot of us too. His girlfriend dumped him, publicly, on Facebook. She posted screenshots of their texts where he begged for money after Dad cut him off. She called him a liar, a thief, and a manipulator. The comment section turned brutal. People who once kissed his ass were now calling him a con artist, spoiled loser, and worse, and I just watched, quietly. Dad didn't make a big statement either. He didn't call a family meeting. He didn't try to set the record straight, but one morning he walked into the shop with the old sign in hand, the one Eric had taken down, and put it back up without a word. Customers noticed. Employees noticed. Everyone noticed Eric, humiliated, moved out of the house. "No big goodbye." No explanations. "Just gone," Mom cried. But not for him, for what the family had become. And me? I showed up to work like always. Same quiet, steady presence I'd always been, only now. People looked at me differently, with respect, with regret. Like maybe they should have listened sooner. A week after Eric disappeared from the house, Dad came into the shop earlier than usual. I was stocking shelves in the back when I heard the bell jingle. "I didn't even look up. Got a minute?" he asked. His voice was quiet. Not tired, but different, like something had been stripped away. We sat in the back office, just the two of us, like we used to when I was a teenager learning how to do payroll by hand. He didn't say anything for a while, just stared at the dented file cabinet like it had answers. Then finally, "I owe you an apology." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to lash out, to ask why it took him this long to believe me, but I just nodded and let him speak. "I was blind," he said, "not because I didn't see the signs, but because I didn't want to. Eric's always been a screw-up, but I kept hoping if I gave him one more chance, he'd fix it." He looked at me, eyes red, and in doing that, I destroyed the one person who actually deserved my trust. That broke something in me. Not anger. Not pride, just the deep ache of years lost to silence and misunderstanding. He offered to make things right, said I could take full control of the business again, that he'd reinstate me in the will. Whatever I wanted, but I surprised us both when I said no. I wasn't angry, I just didn't want to rebuild something that only saw my worth when everything else collapsed. "I'm starting something of my own," I told him. "Something I can build from the ground up, with no shadows hanging over me." He nodded. Didn't argue, just sat there, quiet. And this time, his silence felt like respect. It didn't take long before Eric came crawling back, though of course he didn't call it that. He sent me a long message. No apology. Just a twisted blend of excuses, half-truths, and gaslighting. I never meant for things to get this far. You made me look like a criminal in front of everyone. You could have just talked to me instead of sabotaging my life. I read it twice, stunned by how little accountability he took. Not once did he say, "I'm sorry." Not once did he ask how I was doing. He ended it with, "We're still brothers. Don't forget that." I stared at the words, waiting to feel something, anger, relief, even guilt. But I didn't. I felt nothing. Like whatever thread had once tied us together had been burned clean through. So I didn't respond. I blocked his number, deleted the message, and walked outside into the sunlight. It was a normal day. Kids on bikes, someone mowing a lawn down the street, birds chirping like they had no idea how much had fallen apart. And honestly, that made me feel something real for the first time in weeks, because the peace wasn't in what Eric said, or didn't say. The peace was in not needing to reply. I didn't need his permission to move on. I didn't need closure from someone who'd never given me honesty. For the first time in my life, I wasn't reacting to someone else's chaos. I was choosing my own calm. People always expect revenge to be loud, explosive, a final, dramatic mic drop. But mine wasn't. It was silence. No social media posts. No dramatic text to the family. No receipts blasted in group chats. I never paraded my proof, never tried to humiliate Eric beyond what the truth had already done. I just let the facts do the heavy lifting. And it worked. Dad still stops by the small garage I opened on the edge of town. It's not flashy, but it's mine. He doesn't say much during his visits, just brings coffee and asks if I need anything. We don't talk about Eric. We don't even talk about the fallout. But I see it in his eyes. He knows he got it wrong. And he's trying, in his own quiet way, to show up now. Mom sends texts, too. Short ones. Thinking of you. Or, let me know if you need groceries. I respond when I can. I'm not trying to punish anyone. I'm just done bending over backwards to belong. Sometimes I think about the version of myself I was before all this. The guy who thought being the responsible one would earn him love. That being quiet and good would be enough. But I know better now. Love without respect is manipulation. Trust without proof is blind. I still have that USB drive, the one with all the evidence. It sits in a drawer next to my desk. Not because I need it anymore, but because it reminds me that I wasn't crazy, that I was right, and that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away with your dignity intact while the people who betrayed you are left choking on their own silence.